So now you can see just a single screen with my slide deck and my video in the corner. I think this is the proper setup at the moment. Okay, so let's start then. Here we will decline your request to step on the podium. If you have any questions, please use chat. We have a chat. Here's the chat. So if you have any questions, please use the chat. We will cover questions as soon as they arise. So send your messages. I will see notification for messages, and I will try to answer your messages and questions in real time. So today we're going to cover this new update. And this is a brand new version of our solution for legacy video conferencing infrastructure. A lot of companies are still using SIP equipment and H.323 equipment, which is the default protocols for legacy video conferencing endpoints, the codecs used in your conferencing rooms. In most cases, if you have a conferencing room, most probably you still have the equipment which works over those protocols. The equipment manufactured by Poly, Cisco, Ualink, Huawei, Picturetail, whatever. Many different companies for the last 30 years are manufacturing legacy equipment for video conferencing, which are running above standard protocols like SIP and H.323. And for such endpoints, 3 years ago, we started to develop the new product, which is called MCU, the legacy video conferencing server, the mixing server, which is very different to our main product, which is called TrueConf server. And I'm not going to cover the differences. I'd like to make sure that you understand the difference, and which is quite simple. TrueConf MCU is to control, operate in real time, the endpoints in the conferencing rooms which use legacy protocols like SIP and 323, because there are no other ways to control them. We can only use MCU to manage their layouts, audio streams, messages, whatever, how they behave under different conditions. To manage participants of those endpoints, to manage layouts, we have to use MCU. While TrueConf Server is a different product which is designed for desktops, mobiles, and for new generation of conferencing rooms. So today we're going to cover the MCU. Previous version was the version 1.5, and today we are releasing the new version. It is already available. The version 2.0, you can download it from our website, and I'd like to highlight that we have a free version of MCU, so you are free to try. Everything you see today, you can try absolutely for free, because the free version has the limit for 100 connections, which is more than enough for most cases, for most companies. However, it has the badge that every conference, every endpoint who joins the free version, it will see that it is connected to TrueConf MCU. That's it. Not significant other limitations are available in the free version. So we are really asking you to try. It is the best available MCU on the market with the best UI for administrators. We are very well known, all the pain, all the troubles the administrators of legacy video conferencing conferences administrators have. So we created the UI, the interface, which really helps them to manage multiple conferences simultaneously with less issues, with less problems, and we improve the quality of life for people who continue to manage legacy equipment in their rooms. Okay, I will switch between the demo server and the slide deck. If you can hear me well and you can see everything well, so let's start with the demonstrations. Okay, so first of all, we totally updated the interface. We redesigned the position of many windows. We updated small pieces of UI, some widgets, and many other stuff to make it more user-friendly. And again, to help administrators to control conferences with less problems, to help them to find important information and important pieces of the user interface in the milliseconds. So now it is become, the new version is much easier to use, much easier to control, and much easier to notice any changes in the conferences which operator or administrator controls in real time. Because in legacy video conferencing world, every conference is monitored. Every conference is being controlled by operator. They're not happening on their own, like in Zoom. So we have to offer the interface which should help people to manage them in real time. So I will switch to the demo. Here we are. So let's start. So first of all, we decided to move the main menu from left bar to the top bar. So now you can see that the main menu, which is pretty simple, is located in the top of the page. The menu is absolutely the same. However, it doesn't eat the space on the left. So we use the whole space of the screen for management, which is good. So we use the vacant space, free space on the top for menu and some other significant widgets, but it doesn't consume space for important parts like list of participants, list of active conferences, etc. So now you can see the address book, which was available before, but now we decided to add more details. And for example, we display avatars everywhere. We can select people here, like in other TrueConf applications. For example, we can move them to a new group. We can remove them. We can apply some group actions above your address book. As if you remember the previous webinar about MCU version 1.5, you might remember that we last time we added integration with Active Directory. So it is possible to collect contacts from some directory, so you don't need to add them manually. And we also redesigned other parts of this, but let's do it one by one. So first of all, let's cover the new new menu, which is conferencing history. I will go there, see. And the conferencing history is, it was hidden in the settings previously, but now it is available here. And this section is pretty powerful because it allows administrator to see the activity of its server. We can see which conferences happened on my server. And what is really important and very nice, we can access the data for every conference. So we can see the histogram, the diagram for every conference. I have a conference here. Let me check this conference. Yeah, let's have a look at this example. So we have a test conference, just a some conference, which was active for 33 minutes, 20 seconds, 12 seconds. And 5 endpoints, it could be users or endpoints, but you have to understand that in case of MCU, we're speaking about SIP and H.323 participants, usually conferencing room equipment, not just users. It could be users, it could be other conferences, but in most cases, it is rooms. And we can see on this diagram that during this conference, which could last for many days, but you can use the same ID for the conference, like for a virtual room, for a long time, for a long period of time. But this diagram shows you which participant connected to this conference, when they left the conference, how long they've been inside the conference. So you can, for example, provide the reports if someone participated in a call, when someone left the conference. You don't need to look for log files. So you can see it by your own eyes, thanks to this nice UI. And if we click on the statistic for every user, we can see the address from which this participant connected to the conference, when he connected, for how long he was connected, and what was the reason why he disconnected from the call. So it could be hang up from the user, it could be timeout from the network, it could be the end of the conference by the administrator of MCU. There are many types of reasons, but Again, it helps us to troubleshoot some basic issues. For example, the remote party tells you why I was disconnected during the meeting. And thanks to this new history section, you can easily find this information.
Lev, there's a question here. Is it fine to ask questions at this point, or do you prefer to ask them in the end?
Let's cover the question. We don't have a lot of participants, Lev 30, so let's cover them one by one right now. Ritis, nice to see you. The good question, because this is the diagram, when the same user, the same participant will connect second time, we will see here another bar for some period of time. So every participant will generate the new blue bar. So it could be multiple blue bars for the same conference. So this diagram shows the whole conference. Conference consists of many sessions. When all people left the conference, the current session is over, but conference is still active, and the new session will start when someone new will connect to the same conference. And this diagram will show us. It is very easy to understand when one session ends and new sessions begin, because you will see the new bar on this timeline. So you have to use the scroll bar to move around. Ivan, thank you for the tip. Yeah, even better, the missing time will be colored in gray color between the blue bars for the same participant to highlight that he was absent for some period of time. Okay, we're also seeing this short gray bars, which displays that we tried to reach their participant. It was like we are trying to reach them, to call them. We also see in this new section the reason why conference has been started and the reason why conference has been ended. And it could be action from administrator, or it could be automatic. It could happen automatically because of the scheduling settings. For example, we can schedule a conference and it started automatically, not manually by administrator. But today we're playing around with the MCU product, and we did a lot of manual starts. That's why administrator is displayed here as the reason for conference start and end. The settings administration panel, the settings is the same, so not much changes here. So let's move forward. So we covered 3 from 4, and let's have a look on the new updated conference section. The conference section has a lot of changes. As you can see, we added a lot of tips for when we don't have anything to display. We're telling you why you don't see anything. For example, if we don't have participant in the current call, we will display you buttons to add more participants. If you don't see anything here, you have to select the conference. So to make interface more friendly for new administrators. And let's start from the list. And in this list, like before, we don't have the menu on the left, so we can use more space to control the meeting. We added settings for sorting, so now we can sort the conference. And we can filter conferences based on the fact which administrator created it, because we have we can have many administrators, many different. Actually, I will cover this later. We added in the new rule, so different administrators could create conference, and we can filter to show all conferences on the server or just mine. If I select the conference, let's play around with the demo conference. Everything else is almost the same. However, we make access to the settings closer. You don't need to go to the settings anymore for the conference to access the additional settings. So you can browse through additional settings right from the conference view. So right now I have a conference view which is not active, which is stopped, and I can go through those tabs to access settings which previously was available under the settings. So it's one click closer to the users. You can also see the users tab on the right. So which is very essential and very easy to understand. On the left we have conferences which could be active or stop, and on the right we have our address book, and we can drag and drop people to the current selected conferences or to other conferences from this user panel. So I can, for example, this conference is stopped. It's not started yet, but I can add this user, for example, Deborah, will be invited to this conference. I just simply drag it from the user panel to the conference view, and immediately it was invited to the call. I can make sure that she will not be called when I start the conference. So I will be able to invite you later, for example. It was available before, just we updated some icons here. But the idea that we can move people around from active conference or from address book to another conference or to the current conference. And it could be a group of users, which is even more impressive. So again, it is done to ease the life of administrators, because administrators have to manage conferences manually in legacy world. And we can split users into groups, so we can move groups around, which is even more impressive. I select the whole group and move the whole group to the conference I want to move them, or current conference, or invite them to the current conference, which is not started yet. You see how many possibilities the new UI open. So let's disable the group view. Okay, let's go to the slides. Just a moment. We covered conference history with a diagram of the activity of every participant for the whole time a conference was created and active. When we create a conference, we decided to add additional ID field for the conference. Previously, ID field was limited only for digits. So it was easy to create a conference, let's say 8,000 or 1, 2, 3, 4, but we were limited with the ability to create the alphabetical ID for the conference. And we decided to add support for, let's call this road, but actually it is an alias. So for every conference now, we have the old ID, which is digit-based, because it is easier to enter digits using DTMF menus. In many video conferencing codecs, we don't have keyboard. We have only remote controller with digits. So it's better to create virtual rooms and conferences with digits. So we can just enter using DTMF menu some digits, press hash to connect the conference, etc. But sometimes we share the link for the conference, and it is possible to be done with TrueConf MCU, because we can share a link to use WebRTC to join this conference. And sometimes we need a nice UI, nice name, nice ID for the conference, because we are sharing it with someone. And we came up with the idea that, let's say for this meeting, 6470 something, we decided to create a new name, which will be meeting, and it will be valid. And if you call this ID, this route, let's say meeting at IP address of the MCU, it will be answered. The MCU will recognize that this meeting ID, the new route, is an alias for the digital ID, and will connect such user, endpoint, whatever to the code. Let me show you. So when I go to the settings, general settings of the conference, let's create a new conference actually. So this is the new conference. We automatically fill the information, some basic information for the new conference with a random number, with the random ID, and random name, and random road, the random alias. And we can change this. It could be webinar. Why not? And we can change the name. And you might be confused that now the conference has like 3 parameters which corresponds for its name. Don't be confused. Conference name is the name used only inside the MCU. It is visible only for administrators, so you can use it to create, let's say, town hall meeting, the board meeting, the trainings, just some internal use, while road and ID is internal IDs for the conference, which is used to call it from outside. So the road is alphabetical version, and ID is digital version we had before.
Lev, I can see there's an icon to synchronize the conference name and road.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, we can automatically, to save time of administrator, again, we can click here and the road name will be automatically created from the conference name. We will remove all unsupported symbols which are not supported by SIP and H.323 and create the name. We can also create random names and random IDs. You have to click on this shuffle button to randomize, just to make sure that ID created is not matching any other IDs on the server. So it's always new. You can make sure that it will be totally new. We're also finally, it is a very important feature, but wasn't available before. We added support for PIN code. It could be any up to 10 digits. It could be 1 or 2 digits, not a problem. We allow short PIN codes. It's up to you to increase the security of your conferences, so you can make a short one or long one. But we can enable it on the go, or we can enable it before the conference actually started. And the MCU will render the UI DTMF menu asking for the new endpoint to enter the PIN code before it will be able to join it, like in other systems. So this is very common settings. And we also decided to allow administrators to decide whether this conference will be available to be accessed using WebRTC. So if you think this conference, this virtual room should be accessed by WebRTC link, you have to check this box. Otherwise, it won't be possible to access it using the browser. You will need to call it over SIP or H.323 protocol. This is pretty simple. Okay, let's go for the slides. Another new setting is for optimization performance optimization. It is now conference-based, not global-based. So before, we should manually create layouts for the conference if we don't want to display the self-view, which significantly saved the resources on the server. Now we can apply those settings to the conference. If I go here, you can see the self-view settings. We advise you to use automatical settings, because if we will see that the MCU is experiencing high load, we will automatically remove self-view. However, you can manually select, should we display the self-view, which is the most consuming settings. Should we display the self-view or not? If we don't display self-view for participants, that means we have to create a unique layout for every participant without himself or herself. So that creates additional layouts on MCU, which increase the load. For important meetings, it's okay. For regular meetings on MCU, when you want to save resources, we don't recommend to do that because it really starts the new mixing process on the server. Every new layout is basically requires one logical core, one virtual core on your MCU, and you will see the increasing load on this widget on the top. So you can, for not important meetings, you can say, okay, let's display people, let's allow people to see themselves in the layout, and we will make just one layout for everybody, and that's it, and it will significantly save their resources. Of course, you still have access to the custom layouts, which are very powerful in our product, but for some basic settings, here it becomes much easier. We also decided that it could be useful to allow to call all participants when the conference starts, or not to call all participants when conference starts. If you go to the same settings, you can see start call settings. So we can call everybody who is invited. Let's go to the demo conference. Here we have the list of invited participants. Here it is. Let's invite someone else. I will add some other users, and can remove someone who we don't need, for example. Anyway, so we go to the settings, and we can see that we can set a setting, don't call participant when conference is started. So none will be invited. And when we start a conference, just a moment, just started. You see that participants are not invited, and we have to call them manually. I have to click here to invite them to the conference. And the MCU will try to reach them, and later they will be added. Or we can change the settings to default values, save settings, and we can.
What does it mean to use the default value in this case?
Default, we have to follow those settings. So in the list of participants, we see this icon that whether we have to call this user when conference is started manually or we shouldn't. If we click here, it will invite just a single user, but no other user.
I see.
Or we have to select in the settings that we have to ignore those pre-configurations and call everybody, or just don't call everybody. Okay, on this slide you can see the keys. For example, we have a conferencing room, which is think this user Daniel. And this is a wrong example. Think of it is a conferencing room, the most important, the most luxury conferencing room in your building, and you of course you invite this conferencing room. Let's say that Cisco employed in this conferencing room to many conferences on your MCU, and you click on those settings that in every conference, when it started, it shouldn't be called. Otherwise, if it will be called and another meeting is not finished in the conference room, and it will receive a call from MCU, the codec will display incoming call. If it has built-in multi-point support on the codec, it will render to conference. It will be a mess. So we allow you to disable automatic calling for specific users, but while this user will be added to the multiple conference, and when this conference starts, we will be able to see this user. Let's we created a conference. Let me show you. Okay, I create a conference in just new conference to these two users. We're waiting for them to reply for our call. They're not replying us for some reason. Okay. Oh, this is correct. They're not they're not part of the call because we tell the MCU not to invite them. So while we can see them in the list of participants who disconnected, who wasn't invited, and I can invite them manually. So I add them, but after that, I invite them manually. Now we see them as active participants in our conference. By the way, we also added support for users which we endpoints who are connected to the MCU now can have the busy status. So if we see that this particular participant is connected to one or another conference on our MCU, we can display in the address book and the list of participants that he's busy. If I go to another conference, I will be able to see that those participants are busy.
That's really helpful.
Okay, let's move forward. We also added the global waiting room. That means if you try to reach MCU by its domain name or IP address, and you don't specify the virtual room you want to connect to, you just call the IP address. You are going to the global lobby. Now, administrators of the MCU will be able to see requests to that global lobby. So I will ask my colleague Ivan to make a call to MCU. Ivan, please make a call. In here, you see the bell right there in notifications panel. I see the new notification. So we have incoming call. Someone connected to the lobby. And the new user, Jane Flowers, connected to the lobby. And what we can do, drop this user or endpoint from the lobby, or proceed this request and decide to which active conference we have to connect that user. We have a single active conference, this one I just created together with you. So I move from the global lobby this participant to that conference. Just a moment. We will render him. Yes, this user connected to the conference and now visible here. The camera is disabled. Camera is enabled. Hello, Ivan. Now we can see that we render from MCU this layout in this user. He's successfully connected. By the way, To remind you, we have a lot of settings here, so we can enable a lot of diagnostic information for every participant, resolution, bit rates, codecs being used, easily access some quick settings like layout, specific layout for the specific user, and many other things, like volume control, DTMF, and details for every call. Anyway, so it doesn't mean we didn't have waiting room before. We had it. Actually, if I start another conference, let me do that. Now we have 2 running conferences. And let's pretend this empty conference is the most important conference, and this conference is the waiting room. So like before, I can move around users from one conference to another. I have to drag. Sorry. It should be here. Yeah. I can move the user to another conference. So this way we can do the waiting room like before, thanks to support of moving users before, thanks to support for moving users between conferences. However, with the global lobby, we also can help people who stuck in invitation window of our MCU, who don't have the name of the virtual room. So now we can pick them up and move to a specific conference. Okay, let's optimize the view here. Yeah, the moving interface was updated, so we have to click new participant. We also added support for not just custom layout for a specific user. Sometimes we need to apply a custom layout for the group of users, and we can save this before conference start or on the go. Let's say for this conference, by the way, please pay attention that Ivan has disconnected, and now we can see that he disconnected by his own wish. The session was ended by participant. We also can see the time he was disconnected and how long he was connected to the conference, how long his session was. Some additional information useful for administrator. So we can see why this user has been placed to the list of disconnected, because he decided to disconnect. We didn't kick him. Anyway, so if we go to the layout settings, now we can create layout for the group of users. If we invited to the conference many users, we will see more options here, but for this conference, we have only 2 participants who was invited. And just for them, we automatically create the name for this custom layout. We can create a custom layout. Let's create a custom. We have to disable automatic because we have to manage this. As I remember, 18 is the optimal number for this type of layout. Yeah, let's put. Yeah, we decided that those 2 users will be located in the center of the layout, and the top row will be for active speakers, for example, or automatically filled.
Yeah, that's quick.
And the important thing, I'm just playing with the layout editor, but we can also shuffle participants. They will replace each other. If we have more than 18 people who are not speaking, who is not active speakers, but inside the call, they will be rotated in the lower row. So there are many settings for layout. The idea, however, is that just those 2 users will receive the same layouts, or it could be a set of users. So we decide that we can create a specific layout for the group of users. So I don't need to manually recreate these layout settings. You have seen that I did a lot of clicks. So sometimes it requires some time to create a custom layout. So now I don't need to recreate all the settings for another user. I just create, let's say, a template, and I decide to which users I have to apply it. So we can create a layout, and now we can apply it to any group of users, which is very useful. So now it's not just a custom layout. It is a template which could be applied to any set of users inside the conference. That's important. And all participants will see automatic layout, but those 2 users will see our custom fixed layout. For example, they have a big and nice LED screen in an important meeting hall, and they have to display those participants in a big, and others should be small, for example, and they are okay not to see other types of layout in that room. So we can do that just for them without affecting the layouts for other participants. And we can do this on the go for the conference happening right now. So if I check the layout for this user, I think it will be applied already. Okay, let's continue. We also decided to apply on the conference level the active layout settings. So now when we have automatic layout for the conference, we can automatically enlarge people who is speaking. Before it was disabled, just the old previous version has the single settings disabled, but now we can enable 2 types of larger window for active speaker. Of course, it will affect the layout settings you created for the conference. However, it helps administrators to easily enable most commonly used setting for the layout, and the most commonly setting for the layout is to enable the active speaker view. And now we can do this with a single click. Before, in the previous version, we had to create the new layout, and we have to make one in the layout. We have to make one video bigger than others, and to select the setting for active speaker for this bigger view in the layout. Now we can automatically create this with this setting. So let me show you. We have an active layout in the settings, but however we can enable active voice activity view here, and we have 2 types of voice activity settings. For example, we can create the active speaker, and all others will be available as well, but as a smaller windows below. Or we can show only the active speaker and nothing else, just a single active speaker. This will happen only if we have voice activity detected from that speaker, and it will cancel for the period of voice activity, not for the whole time. Just for period of voice activity, the layout settings will be replaced with this default voice activity window. So when it doesn't happen here because those bots, they don't have voice activity actually. If I check this layout, it won't be applied to them. We still have a default layout selected for that set of users. However, if it would say something, they will be displayed in a big window, while all others will be smaller. So it's like a short, quick settings for the default layout with one big user who is speaking and all others small. And we can disable this any moment. Because this is the most common action administrators perform for the layout, we decided to move it here. It is now #1 button here. We also created a single dedicated button for content sharing. And for content sharing, we can use any sources, presentation, PDF files, images, video files, and we can send the content to the main layout as a video stream, or we can send it over BFCP protocol, or in case of H.323 connections to H.239 protocol as a secondary stream. So it's up for us to decide where to send it. So let's send it to the primary stream. I just click here, and we just started to play in the main layout some new some videos. So I think we can see it here. So now the video is being played back. You can see it here. And we can also, and this is the new feature, click when we invite. Let's stop. I will invite it one more time. Just a moment. I click here to disable the automatic restore of the playback. Otherwise, the video will be played for a limited period of time. So if I click here, this is a new feature. It will be played only once. So by default, we play the video multiple times. Okay, so we can also see that the video file and the image file, they used to be our participant of this conference, and they are not participants anymore. And the reason why they disconnected is that I decided to drop them. I dropped them from the meeting, so we have a different reason for disconnection. Very useful. So we have the whole history of a conference. So let's end this conference, stop it, go to the history, and check it. So now you can see that we different sessions. So this view is adjusted. We have one user who was connected for 5 minutes. We also have the image and video file, which was displayed for a short period of time, less than 1 minute. That's why the bars are so short, not long ones. But again, it's a good example for this conference that we can see clearly that we had multiple sessions in a single conference because, for example, this user was active for 2 minutes. After that, the conference was running, but nobody was there. And after that, we added the content users. Okay. We also have a quick settings to highlight the active user. If I start the conference, let's this second conference and start the previous one. I will invite automatically all users here. Just a moment. Yeah, users are busy. Conference has started. So now, if, for example, we would like for all participants to highlight the specific participant, specific endpoint, we can click on this crown icon. Yes, it will disable the settings we have. Voice activity detection, because we put a crown, this is disabled. And no matter who is speaking, this user will be highlighted in the layout. Let's do it a little bit. Just 2 of them. That's why. And all other layout settings will be ignored because we put a stress, we highlight some specific user.
So all the templates, they will not be applied, right?
It is important, for example, when we need for some period of time to make content larger or some important user is speaking, so we can not go to the layout settings, which requires time. We can make some mistakes if we're in a hurry. We just put a crown on that user and it will become larger than others. It's quite simple.
And we can apply it to, let's say, like half of them, of the users.
Only
like
one.
For several.
Only one.
Only one.
So just a short setting. It could be 10 participants in this call, but the crown is only one. We have to move it from one. It will automatically transfer from one user to another. Or possible to enable 2 of them. Or we can disable it. Okay. We also added this view. So let me start another conference. This empty conference. You can see that now we have 2 options for the conference. Let's start it. Either we have to add a participant from the address book. Now we see the list of contacts we have in the address book, or we can connect the participants from different protocols. So it's like 2 different approaches. We have a conference, and we have for the conference we have 2 actions. Not just add a participant. We can click Add Participant button to quickly access the address book, or we can drag and drop those users, as we've seen already. Or we can click this, it's a copy of these buttons here. When we have someone in the conference, we have those buttons available here. So we can not to select user from the address book, we can select the protocol and the way, the address, how to connect to the user. Let's say we would like to connect over H.323. We need to enter the address. display name, which will be displayed in the layout, settings, let's say, connect this user with the microphone disabled, and some other settings, which we can select here and here. There could be many settings. However, I'd like to address this specific settings, setting which is called cascading. When we invite another conference to an active conference, which is cascading, so we mix another conference into the layout spot of the existing conference, we don't want the remote conference to see themselves. We have to disable the self view for the remote conference. So when we cascade another conference, participant of another conference, they shouldn't see themselves. It will create a loop, which is not useful. So before, we had to create a custom layout for that particular user to disable the display of self view just for that user, which create a lot of, it requires time, it requires some preparations. But now, if we have in our address book, or if we are adding user using this interface by IP address, we can tell the MCU that we are reaching the remote conference. And when we enable this cascading checkbox, we will never render the self view back to that user, no matter settings was selected in the conference. We are telling the MCU that this user is actually another conference, and we don't have to look back the video and audio. That's how it works. So it helps again to save time of administrator by using this checkbox. We don't need to create a custom layout anymore for cascaded conferences.
So this flag is better to display for those conferences which are going to be part of the main conference, right?
It is usually used when you don't have enough available resources on your MCU. For example, you already have, let's say, Poly Clarity, or you have a Poly RMX server, and you have, let's say, the capacity of TrueConf MCU, let's say 32 users. You also have 16 Full HD connections available on RMX. So, and the goal for administrator is to make a larger conference, let's say for 48 participants. So we create a conference on RMX for 16 users, and we create a conference on TrueConf MCU, let's say for 31 users. And the 32nd users will be invited as a cascaded user from, actually it will be our mixed conference. So we will display on TrueConf MCU, like in a layout, let's say right part of the screen, the users from our mix all together. So we can join multiple conferences together. But for MCU, it's not another conference actually. Behaves for him for it as another participant, but it will work because we combine together two units, two servers to support larger conferences. Because MCU is very resource-hungry solutions. It's not like TrueConf server with support for thousands of users. MCU, because of the mixing, transcoding, because of this requirement for operator to control everything, and with a lot of custom layouts, it requires a lot of resources because of the nature of the architecture for legacy SIP endpoints and H.323 endpoints, which are not capable to receive multiple streams. We have to mix every group conference for them, and this is the reason why MCU exists.
But with cascading, you can actually have much more users in this conference with the less load, right?
Yeah,
in this case,
basically we balance the load on multiple instances, on multiple MCUs. Very few customers have more than 2 MCUs, but usually customers have the existing MCU. It could be Codium, Cisco meeting server, RMX, whatever they have, ELA meeting server, and we offer them the TrueConf MCU free version for up to 100 connections. So we're actually seeing this very often, that our solution is used in a parallel, in addition to existing MCU, and we help customers to grow the number of endpoints they support. So we increase the capacity with TrueConf MCU of existing MCU, because usually MCUs are hardware appliances, and it is not very easy to make it bigger. You either have to order a second unit, and sometimes it's just not possible to buy because they are outdated, and they're not produced anymore. Actually, that's a problem. Or we are using virtual machine. We have to reconfigure it, but it creates problems. And you have to buy the license, and licenses for Poly and Cisco. It's in some countries they're not available. In some places, it's difficult to obtain without support plan. So it's usually very expensive. And for most of the customers, for many companies, it's much easier to additionally install TrueConf MCU to increase the capacity of the existing deployment they have for legacy equipment. And that's why cascading is happening always. It's an important setting. Anyway, we added support for operator role. So if I go to the settings of MCU, now we have access management settings with roles. And the difference is very simple. Now, before we had only administrators. Now we have operators. Administrators can do everything: manage conferences, manage users, manage settings of the server. Operators, they can do only conference management and address book management. So it's very simple. Administrators can access all 4 settings on top of the screen. Operators can only access the first 3. They are not able to go to settings of the server. Operators can only manage conferences, address book, access logs and history files, but they are not able to go there to change some settings. It is not possible for them. So this is a new role. So we can create new accounts for the people who help us to manage the conferences in our organization, but we can make sure that they will not broke anything because they don't have access to the settings, so they will not change the network card, IP addresses, transcoding settings. It's just not possible for them. And any user from our address book could become operator. Any user from our address book could become an administrator. We just need to create a login and password for that. Don't be confused that we are selecting SIP endpoint. It just for us, just the item from the address book for which we can create a login and password, and it will be just selected here. Just for example, this way you can create a custom user account with avatar. Okay. We also added support for descriptions, and descriptions are available during the conference. They're available every moment. And descriptions are very useful. For example, when you receive a call from a remote location, let's say the call from the conferencing room of your partner or from another country, and you'd like to save this contact, you can add it to the address book. And this description is very useful. You can add some additional information. For example, it could be the cell number of the administrator on that remote location. It could be some useful command, for example, never enable mic for that endpoint, for example, because they create a lot of noise for the meeting because of the wrong settings on that part. So those descriptions are available all the time, everywhere. So if I start a conference with some participants, let's do it again. I can add description for this user any moment. Just a moment. Explaining. Yeah, here it is. So I can create some description. I don't need to click save or anywhere, just I saved it. And when I invite this user to another conference, and this description will be available. Or I can do that outside of the call in the address book. But this useful information about how to reach remote location, how to properly select video and audio codecs for that location could be saved there forever in our address book. And it will be available for all administrators and all operators. So it is not visible for any other users. It's just visible for local administrators and operators. But it could be very useful to add this. We also added the support for automatic call for all available destinations for the specific user. Let me show you. End this conference. I go to the address book, I think here. Yeah, here. We have a user, Deborah. And we are seeing that this user has a lot of addresses. It could be a cell phone, it could be a SIP destination, it could be H.323 destination. We actually can add as many destinations we want to. And when we add this user to the conference or call it, the MCU will try to reach every destination until it will be replied to. So once we reach over any destination of the user, after that, we stop trying, and we will finally have this user in our call or in conference. But before that, we try to reach him or her or the conference room by all available ways. So you can add new destination here and pay attention. It could be different protocols. It could be a YouTube stream, RTSP stream. It could be a desktop from VNC. It could be a SIP or free-to-free destination. And for every destination, we can select specific settings. For example, we can try to reach this, let's say, link endpoint. First of all, we try to reach it over SIP with 729 disabled, because the technical support of Link told us to do so, or administrator of the remote location asked us not to use this codec, for example. And after that, we had another destination over free-to-free with a different settings. So we save this, and it really helps to make sure that once we properly set settings for that user, it will be reached every time we call them. And we try to reach different protocols, because this is a legacy world. Every vendor, every manufacturer of codecs in your room, they have different realizations, different implementation of the standard. Sometimes they work out of the box, sometimes they are not, sometimes they don't scale the video quality up to Full HD, sometimes they do. So that could be many issues which we are not able to control, unfortunately, because we are not manufacturers of those endpoints. However, we can give you the ability to properly select a different customized settings for every way to connect to that user or endpoint. Cascading was covered already. Busy status, I told you before, it only applied to the users who are added to the address book. We are not seeing status of other users. Loopback is enabled by default for all video content. You're trying to play back to the video stream or content stream, and you can disable that, but by default it is enabled. Okay, what else we have here? Okay, also small improvement, which is very useful. If I try to call the wrong user, let's say we have a demo conference here, let's start it. And I enable everybody, let's start a conference. Okay, so conference started, but for some reason, some users are not available, they're not replying. So using our network connection, we're not able to reach those participants. So we can go to the settings of those participants and change the IP address or port number. So this is like a real-time troubleshooting. So we adjust the port number and we try to connect with adjusted settings. We don't need to manually enter the address of that user and invite it by address. So we just changing the settings we used to try first time to reach this user. We can select here again the codecs, so we can try different ways without generating the new connection, without copying, pasting information. We're just changing what we already tried to reach. We can enable or disable some settings. So you have seen the settings before, but those settings are not for the address book. These settings are for the destination. For some reason, we are not able to reach. So we'll click here, make changes, and try to reach them again with the changes being applied automatically. So don't need to copy and paste everything. And the MCU tells me immediately that he knows nothing about this new user because it has a new destination he is not aware of. I can add to the address book the copy of that user with a different port number, for example. So Or we can add as a different destination for that user, but we have to go to the address book. So let's stop trying to connect to the wrong port number. It won't help us. Again, very useful when we have a large conference and we try to reach codecs we didn't connect for some period of time, and remote locations, they could change their external IP address for the office network. They could change port numbers. They could add DDoS protection. So some network setting could change, and we can easily adjust this on the go on the phone with a remote administrator without need to create a new connection. The reasons we covered already, so now it is clearly visible why some participant has been disconnected for the call and how long the connection was active. So you can see that from the slide. The contextual search is, yeah, it's like a full search. So if you try to search anything anywhere, we will try to automatically populate the search field with address book results. So let me show. Here we can filter. Here we can filter active users. But if I try to invite user, let's invite it here, and try to enter the address of the user, and if we called that user before, if we have that user in our address book, the MCU will display for you a suggestion that maybe you are looking for that user. Again, it saves time. So in this case, we have this user in our address book and the display name was populated, but it could be any other address you used before. Again, we remember destinations you tried to reach, and we display them automatically to save time. Okay, and finally, a very important setting, we added support for NTP servers. NTP servers are actually time servers, so they help to synchronize time on machines in your network. So your VPN network could be large, it could be different time zones, different countries, but you have to make sure that all your users in your domain, they have the same time, and this way, which is important because if you have an invitation for a conference and you have a wrong time on your MCU server, it will start in a wrong time, and people will try to reach conference. They come to the conference room. They will wait for incoming call on the endpoint in the conference room, but it will not happen because of the wrong time setting on the MCU. It will, for example, it could happen 2 minutes late, but people already can leave the conference room. So it is important to be synchronized. And if we go to the administration settings, date and time, now we can add your corporate NTP server address or some global NTP server addresses available in the internet. And here we can also select the current time zone we have for the local server to properly display the statistics, history of calls, and it is possible to enable or disable synchronization. So this is pretty useful, and this beautiful map is also available just to properly select your time zone.
Yeah, that's important.
Okay. Some minor changes for export settings. So now it is possible to save more information about the setup of your MCU. So now you can save not just information about users, you can also save conferencing information about conferences, layouts, participants, schedule for the conference. This is, by the way, this is important, the scheduling. So for every conference, now we have we have to go, conference which is not started yet, we have a scheduling. So basically, every conference is a virtual room. It is available all the time. I can connect it if I know the address or if I know the PIN code, but we can enable the some scheduling. So I can create the scheduling. It could be, for example, this virtual room will be available every week for specific days. Let's say this is something similar for the administrators of TrueConf server. But I can create this, let's say, from 0. every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, this conference will be available. All other days, it will not be available, for example. And we can add as many as we need for such schedules. It could be repeated or a single schedule. We decide how many of them we'd like to add. And it is an additional measure of protection and additional hint for the users. For example, if you have a board meeting, the participants will not be able to reach this destination for the wrong time. Just if they're not aware which day it is, for example. And the information will be displayed, will be rendered by MCU that this conference is not started yet. Okay, we added API. This is an important step for us. We had the API before, but we never told you about it. Now, what we did, we fully described the API for the server. If at least we have to go this address. Yeah, here it is. So API allows you to automate most of the things we covered during this webinar. Conference management, layout management, roles management, user management, address book management. You see a lot of functions, a lot of actions could be applied to different objects on the MCU side. We are following the RESTful architecture. That means we have different actions for every object. It could be create, post, read, get, delete, etc. So this is a common approach for integration nowadays, which is called RESTful API. And we have a lot of different examples and a lot of different functions to call above most of the objects available in the service. So basically, you can create your own control panel. You can integrate TrueConf MCU with a Crestron, IMX, whatever you have environment to automate some typical actions. So you can use the Python or other scripting language to control the solution, to do some typical tasks using scripts and automation instead of control panel for administrators. Okay. That's it. Finally, we covered all the updates for the new version. I'm asking you to try it because more things, more interfaces has been updated. We try to make them more friendly, more useful. I'm also inviting you to subscribe in Telegram or LinkedIn for our groups. We have a large user groups. Recently, we added the user community in WhatsApp. It turned out Telegram is not very popular outside of Middle East of Russia, so you can use our WhatsApp community. We have a lot of people there. And we have a technical support team in every community, so you can address your questions and receive immediate response in our working hours. We also publish our news and updates, so you will be able to stay on the same page with us. So we'll be happy to see you there. If you have any questions, it's the right time to ask them. I will stop sharing my screen.
Regarding the API, which you mentioned, do you plan to add it to the page with the developers.trueconf.com?
Yes, we do. Yeah, it will happen later this month, I believe, because currently the API is locked into the MCU and it's built all together. It's part of the product. Actually, it's generated from the source code of MCU. So we need to create a virtual machine with a demo MCU and wrote from that docs.trueconf.com webpage that virtual machine to make this API available from that address. Well, we will do that, no problem.
Yeah, great news. I see that there are no questions for the moment. So I guess that's it for now.
Perfect. Thank you for your time. The recording will be available. We have a lot of updates coming for this autumn. We also have a lot of events to participate in autumn. So we'll be happy to see you in person on GITEX, which will happen in the middle of October in Dubai. Next week we're going to be in Mumbai in India for Infocom India. So we'll be happy to see you there. We will be in Delhi also that week. So if you are living in Delhi, would like to meet with us, we'll be there in the first week of November. And have a nice day or evening, depending where you're located. And please stay connected to our updates.
Thank you, Lev, for the news, and see you next time, everyone.
And thank you, Rudolf. Goodbye, everybody.